Hey guys, you're here with Dr. Molly,
And Todd Rowland.
and we're bringing you the Pawcast, the business side of the pet industries. Today we're here with Michael Shultz of River Rock Financial, and it's exciting to have him on because they do a lot of financing and things that groomers are having problems finding. You know, a lot of times our mobile vehicles are considered specialized equipment. There's build out. There's a lot of value to them other than just the year, make, and model. And a lot of financing companies have a hard time realizing that. So we were really excited to come across you guys and see how you're helping the pet industry in this area.
Definitely. Thank you for having me on.
So how long has your company been in business?
River Rock Financial has been in business since 1988. They were founded by Bubba Lovett in Hot Springs, Arkansas.
Awesome. So how long have y'all been helping in the pet industry?
In the pet industry, we've been doing this just about a year now. We've seen the need. We reached out to a lot of our banks to see if they offer financing for pet grooming companies. And we have a handful of banks that will work with grooming companies.
That's great. So you guys have always done kind of big equipment, hard to get loans for businesses. Like you kind of understand the background of needing what groomers need and how to get that financing.
Correct. Our background has been predominantly in yellow iron, construction, agriculture, trucking companies, trucking equipment.
Awesome.
So what type of loans do you guys handle?
We handle all the high-risk loans. We handle all the A, B, and C and D level credit loans. So we handle all the construction company, yellow iron, like I said, grooming companies.
Okay. And so if someone is just starting out, like they're working at a big box store that provides grooming and they want to go out on their own and they want to get a mobile unit and possibly a used one, what kind of documentation do they, well, first, should they find the van or should they contact you for a pre-approval? How would they go about that?
I think the best step would be first give us a call. We can go over their specific needs and requirements and their background, give about a 15-20 minute conversation on where they've been, what they've done, their history, how many years in business. We can kind of gauge what they can go with and how we can help them from that one conversation.
Okay.
They don't need to bring anything but what they already know.
Okay. What type of documentation should people go ahead and have ready so when you ask for it, they don't have to go looking for it?
The documentation we usually always need would be their driver's license and their 3 months of bank statements. And then sometimes banks require last 2 years of tax returns.
Okay.
What are the differences if it's like a new business starting out? This is like the first mobile unit they want to get into. What's the requirements and what are kind of the terms based on if you are an established business, and what differentiates the two from like a new business to an existing business for your purposes?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for startup companies, the banks see it as anything below 2 years in business.
Okay.
For companies less than 2 years, there's really two separate categories. It's based on a credit score primarily. So if they're below a 700 credit score, interest rates will go up from 20% all the way up to about 40%.
Wow.
And if they're above 700 credit score, then the interest rates will go up to 20%. And it's really the difference between the two as a startup company.
Okay. So I know like when you're going to buy a new or used car, the interest rates are a little different. Is it the same as if there's someone who's looking at a brand new, say, Wagon Tails or Hanvy van versus buying a used one of those from an individual?
There's no real difference. The real requirements come off of your personal credit score, your years in business, and your background, but heavily on the credit score on these startup companies.
And I realize it would be based on the individual, but typically for someone who is considered a new business under 2 years, what would typically be a down payment that they would need to, percentage-wise, that they would need to?
On average, we're seeing anywhere in the 20% range.
Okay.
On average for the brand new startup companies.
Okay. And would that include, do you finance in the sales tax, or do they need to have that 20% plus the sales tax for the vehicle?
Either way, they can either pay it off themselves or they can have it financed into the deal for the sales tax.
Awesome.
I think that's helpful for a lot of startup businesses since they have so many other expenses with stocking the van and maybe doing the graphics and things like that, to not have to worry about that extra tax money being able to be built in is a benefit that you don't see a lot of times.
A lot of times too, the companies that make the vans, such as Wagon Tails, whatever, their used inventory is very limited. They get one or two, and they're already sold a lot of times before they even put them on the their website. So most people are having to buy if they're buying used for their budget, are having to buy for individual. Are there different hurdles that people have to go through to buy from an individual versus buying from a dealer?
Yes, that's a great question. So there are a couple of different challenges and hurdles. They're not super complex, but they are requirements of the banks because they are party deals. They have to go through more scrutiny for fraud prevention, as in UCC searches, other background checks, things for the banks to assure there's not a fraud taking place. Typically, a private party deal will take about a week and a half in total to get done, whereas a deal from a dealership would take about 3 to 5 days on average from start to completion.
Okay. I kind of want to circle back to the down payment. You said for kind of a startup, it's around 20%. Now, if you're an established business, let's say you're adding your 5th or 6th van, you've been open more than 2 years, showing the growth, what would the typical down payment? Of course, we know it'll vary, but what are
it will vary, of course, but we're typically looking at 0 down or 1 month payment down or 5% down, 10%. It all depends on each individual client itself, but we're seeing anywhere from 0 down to 10% down.
Oh, wow.
And our listeners are all over the United States. So are there any states that you are not able to help in?
We can help in all the 48 states and lower 48 right now. We're attempting the other ones. But predominantly California, North Dakota, and South Dakota are a little more challenging. We have more restrictions for those 3 states just because of each of the states' regulatory laws and their the amount of interest on the loan and all those other documentation requirements just take a little harder for North Dakota, South Dakota, and California.
Okay. Is there a certain year range people that are needing finance on a used one should stay in? Like, is there a certain year where it's more of a high risk or anything like that?
So far, we haven't really seen that come up per se because grooming vans hold their value very well. But obviously, the newer the better. 7 years of newer would be easier to do for grooming van. Obviously, equipment trailer itself, if it's a grooming trailer, is a little bit different.
Okay. And what are the typical loan terms as far as terms in months? Does that depend on your credit score, or is that something?
It's usually based off credit score and also off of the age of the equipment and the value of the equipment. But typically, we're seeing anywhere from 36 to 60 months.
Okay. And if you are an established business, what type of documentations would someone need to get ready before they contacted you?
It's the same process as a startup. It's the same kind of information. Your driver's license, bank statements, tax returns, and just an overall synopsis of what your business has done in the last couple of years. We can write it for the bank.
Do you guys have any organizations, kind of outfitters for these vans that you work with primarily, or does it just range across the board, whatever your borrower needs?
Well, we do have, you mean the ones that do conversions that they're talking about? We do have a couple contacts in the industry that do conversions, so we reach out to if there's a need for it.
Okay, because we see that too, where people will, they will go and buy a van from a dealership, and then they need to get someone to outfit it for them for the equipment.
Exactly.
So is that something that you guys handle too? Like if they already have the van, you'll still finance the outfitting of the vehicle, or does it need to all be done in one package deal?
Well, there's 3 different ways. So as a one package deal, it's a little bit easier to finance it as a complete finance package. If they're trying to do a conversion, there's 2 options we have currently that we're working on. There's something called a cash out loan. So if you have an existing piece of capital, a truck, trailer, piece of equipment you want to put up as collateral, and you have a title on it free and clear, you can use up to roughly 50 to 80% of the value of that piece of equipment as collateral for your conversion. The other one we're seeing that we can do is a working capital loan. For working capital loans, you have to have more than 2 years in business.
Okay.
And then it's probably, you just need bank statements, application, and it's usually a short-term loan, about 15 months. And the most we've seen is 24 months on a working capital loan. These are intended to be short-term loans.
And then when you guys do a loan, are these going to show up on the borrower's personal credit reports?
They show up in the personal credit.
Okay.
And then they also show up, I'm sorry, I need to change that. So all the reports are reported on business credit. We get reported to PayNet, PayDex, and Duns and Bradstreet
Okay.
for the
Awesome.
business side.
So, so you said 7 years would be the best range for someone looking at something not over 7 years.
It's not hard and fast, but it just helps a little bit better.
Okay. How do you handle if someone's buying from an individual and they still have a lien on the vehicle?
But it's just like anywhere else. Like if you go to a normal car dealership, you have a lien on your vehicle. So the bank will get the payoff letter, your 15 or 10-day payoff letter, and then they finance the deal and they'll wire transfer the money to the lien holder, and then the lien holder will release the title to the dealership or seller or buyer.
We just experienced one on a van that we recently purchased that it took us probably 3 months to get the title for it.
Oh yeah, it takes a little bit of time.
So it was state of
at
California.
least, yeah.
But yeah, they had definitely paid it off. It was for the money we gave them, but they still took literally forever for us to get the title.
Right. Yeah, it takes a little bit of time.
What I know it probably just depends, but if someone was thinking about doing this and they wanted to pull their credit report so they kind of know where they stand, is there a certain score that people should try to achieve or have before they contact you? Like, if they're under 600, should they work on their credit a little bit before they contact you, or does it matter?
We have banks that can work with all ranges of credit scores. Obviously, their down payment interest will be higher the lower the credit score is. So if they're willing to accept the payments and interest rates for the lower credit score, then we can by all means help them. But if they want to work on their credit score and get better down payments and better interest rates, then just purely a individual preference.
So as we may have talked a little bit about this, is the terms of the loan as far as how long they are, is there a typical range for that, or is that just case by case specific of kind of where you want the payments to be?
It's case by case. We ask each client, we ask them what they prefer, and we present that to the bank. And depending on their individual situation, the piece of equipment they're trying to purchase, and the value, will come back with a month term. And we can always go back to the bank and ask, hey, can we get a couple more months or a couple less months? So it's all a little back and forth with the banks, but.
Awesome.
So are there any expos or industry events, anything going on where groomers may be able to find you guys, or where can they, reach out to contact you guys to start getting some information? Because like we said, there's a big need for this. We have come across people all the time that have found a van, or they've lost vans because, their financing did fall through, or, something like that. So I think that you guys are going to be a great resource that some of these mobile groomers can either expand or get into the business.
Right. And we've been trying to attend some expos, but we've been so busy and so slammed. It's really hard for us to get out there to the expos. But the easiest way to reach us is give me a phone call, send me an email. I can respond to a text message if it's after hours or whatever they need. I know a lot of groomers work during the day, so they can only communicate at night after they're done grooming. So I make myself available after hours, so they can have that contact and that can help them out.
Okay. And we'll add all your contact information in the show notes for everybody. So once somebody starts getting the idea that they want to purchase their own van, and they reach out to you guys to start working with you, and then they find a van, is there something do you give someone like some type of pre-approval or something where they can show the person, they're 3 states over, hey, this is the van, I'm getting the financing, so please don't sell it to someone else?
Right. So what we can do is a couple different ways. They can either put a down payment on it. They'll hold the vehicle from the seller. And then once we get the approval from the bank, I'll always be talking to the seller and the buyer as a whole transaction is happening. And I'll just reach out to the seller and inform them we have an approval. The customer has accepted the terms and removing the documentation. So that they know, so they have a peace of mind that their piece of equipment is going to be sold.
That's awesome. We've had 7 units and we currently have 6. We sold 1 unit because we were phasing out a truck and trailer unit. And I know that the person had a very difficult time getting it financed. I think they end up getting the money just for the truck because the trailer, whoever they were getting the money from did not understand the value of the trailer. That they probably thought it was worth $1,500 or something, And so luckily the truck had enough value for them to get it with the plus the money they had down. But it was still a very difficult thing for them.
Process. I think it took over a month. I mean, we took our deposit, and I think it took to 6 weeks before they actually got the money and were able to come and pick it up. So hearing that you're kind of in that, week and a half at the most range,
Right.
I think, that's just leaps and bounds above most people.
And when you say
Right.
establish or a newly set, do they need to already have their LLC and stuff in place before they contact you, or can it be solely DBA?
It can be a sole prop. It can be a DBA.
Okay,
It doesn't have to exactly be a LLC. The things that count towards your business time is how you file your taxes. If you're paid 1099 or W-2, that matters. So if you're paid 1099, that essentially starts your business time because you're a sole prop, and we can use
Okay.
that as your business time to get you past that 2 years.
Well, that's very interesting because there are we pay our groomers W-2, but there are a lot of grooming shops that do pay their people 1099. So that would be very helpful because some people have been that for several years and that get their
Or yeah, already be established, even though, they're just now going out on their own.
Right.
Is there any certain insurance requirements you guys require? I'm sure that you have to be established as the lien holder on the note.
No, we don't have to be established.
Okay.
We're just helping the banks and the sellers and the buyers.
Okay.
So each bank has an insurance requirement on a piece of with their header and their form, and we provide that to the buyer, the piece of equipment, and they just follow right along on that page, and it has all insurance requirements the banks require. Puts them as a lien holder and the commercial insurance on it.
Any advice for people that are wanting to start their own and get finance for grooming van? Is there any advice that you have of, I know you took 10 to 20% down, but anything else, other advice that you would have for us to give people?
To better prepare themselves, or how do you
Yes,
mean?
like to start the process of getting ready to contact you.
I mean, for the process for contacting me, it's pretty straightforward. It's not a whole much into it in the very beginning. They already know the information. They know where they've worked. They know the background. They know how much they bring in per month on average, and they know what kind of equipment they're looking for. Just having that information, accessible, and they already have it.
Okay, awesome.
Great.
Well, we appreciate your time today, Michael, and we will put like I said, all your contact information in the show notes. And I think this will be very beneficial, as I said, at some of the classes that Molly teaches, that right after the class, like especially one of the going mobile, that, people want to like, well, how do I get started? I can't get financed. We talked earlier offline that, a lot of people want to go to the local banks and they simply want to look at the Kelly Blue Book value of that 2015 E350 and think that it's worth 15 or 16,000 when its value is 55 or 60,000, and they have such a hard time. And we see people trying to borrow money from family members to make up the difference, and we see a lot of sales fall through. We've bought all used ones. We haven't bought a new one yet, and a lot of times we'll be in line, the second or third person to buy, and they're waiting on other people's, and that will usually,
They never get the financing.
never-
So, because it is
Right.
typically a complicated process. So, we've got some good deals, and hopefully some people, if they're able to use you, will get some good deals because they can actually get access to that money and not have
Right.
to wait, and so drawn out.
It's
Right. I
definitely-
want to just clarify on that 7 years and newer. It's definitely not hard and fast. We can finance older vehicles than that. And what the banks will do, like you're saying about the Kelly Blue Book, the banks will look at the comps that are other units been sold that resemble that same unit you're buying, and that's how they get the value of the vehicle.
Okay.
So it's not based off the Kelly Blue Book; it's based off of the comps of other units.
Yeah. Well, we find this very beneficial because, like there's other industries such as the record service and stuff like that. And like, there are some people that understand that, but the mobile grooming, it's very popular now, but 10 years ago, it wasn't. And so people are still trying to wrap their heads around, where do I get financing for? So I think having an avenue that we can let people know after classes, and then our followers that are thinking about doing it or expanding, instead of having to go through 1,000 hoops with their local bank or something like that, you specialize in equipment financing, and this is specialized equipment. So I think it's going to be very beneficial.
Definitely.
Right. And then out of the banks we have a dozen or so that will do grooming van purchases.
I think that's one thing that's helpful too, is you're not just that one bank. You're working with several banks that you can submit their information off to and get approved or work it out. Where if you go to your one, kind of like, an insurance broker, for people that don't understand, like, you're not going to just a State Farm agent that only sells State Farm, like going to, Bank of America that only does Bank of America. You're you can reach out to multiple once you have their information. I think that's helpful to not just have one avenue.
Right.
All right. Well, we appreciate your time. Do you have anything else, Molly?
Nope. Thank you very much.
All right.